Today we're going to be talking about the Mayan, Aztec, and the Inca. The Mayan developed the system of mathematics. They thrived in the rainforest of Yucatan Peninsula, Belize, Honduras, and Guatemala from 1325 to 1521. The Aztec built a large and dense city at Tenochtitlan. They are located on a swampy lake in the middle of a semi-arid basin in central Mexico. And the Inca were skilled engineers who built vast systems of roads and bridges to unite their empires. They were located high in the Andes Mountains, and they reached their peaks in 1400 and the 1500s. The rise and the fall of the Mayans. The beginning of the Mayan period was called the pre-classic or formative period. The earliest Mayans relied on agriculture. In the middle pre-classic period, they really focused on expanding their presence in the lowland and highland regions. MPP, or middle pre-classic period, also saw the rise of the first major Mesoamerican civilization, the Olmecs. It's still unknown as to why the Mayan disappeared. One by one in the late 18th century to the early 19th century, cities in the lowland were abandoned. 900 AD, Mayan civilizations collapsed. The Aztecs began in 1150 AD with the fall of the Toltec Empire. The Aztecs were vagrants, continually trying to find a territory to occupy. In 1367 AD, the Aztecs used their military might to support the nearby kingdom of Tepanec that was expanding onto the mainland. The Aztecs were more of a vigilante kind of group. They took over kingdoms and took their princesses, skinned them in order to get more land. They collapsed because of Francisco Hernandez. He was the first European to visit Mexican territory. Their army marched into Aztec territory, and although the Aztecs had more numbers than they did, the European settlers had superior weapons. And the Inca, in 1200 AD, the Incas settled in Cusco village in the Andes Mountains. They built a massive kingdom through the military strength of their emperors. They spanned the distance of the northern equator to central Chile and consisted of 12 million inhabitants of more than 100 different ethnic groups at its peak. They collapsed because of Francisco Pizarro and Diego de Almagro. They led a small group of Spaniards. Inca was more killed by the disease that the Spaniards brought them than their actual military force. For the Mayans' religion, they believed in 166 to 250 gods. Their most important god was Itzamna. He was the fire god, and they believed that he created the earth. He was the ruler of heaven as well as day and night. The priests were responsible for performing rituals to keep the people in the favor of the gods. The priests were in charge of impersonating the gods, predicting the future, and working miracles. They believed that their afterlife was not a good one. It was kind of scary. Most people had to travel through dark underworld where mean gods would torment them. The only people that would not go to the scary afterlife were women who died in childbirth and people who had been sacrificed to the gods. The pyramids were monuments to the gods, and it was flat on the top for sacrifices. The Aztecs' religion also believed in many gods. They adopted the god of the tribe that they took over. So if they took over your tribe, they would adopt your religion. They were the people of the sun. They believed that in order for the sun to rise every day, that they had to shed human blood. Hutsi is the most important god to them. He was the god of war, the sun, and sacrifice. The priests were responsible for making sure the gods were offered the correct offerings and sacrifices. Their afterlife had levels. Depending on how you died would determine where you went. If you died in battle, you'd be in the best place. And if you drowned, you would be in the lowest level. The Inca also believed in many gods. They believed that their ruler was actually part god. The gods occupied three realms: the sky, the inner earth, and the outer earth. Inti was the most important god. He was the god of the sun. Their temples were Korchana, which is the most important. It was built in the heart of the city for the sun god. It was made of sheets of gold. Their afterlife, they did mummification. They brought gifts to the dead that they thought that they would need in the afterlife. Their heaven is divided into 4 quarters. If you lived a good life, you'd be able to be in heaven with the sun, and if you lived a bad life, you'd be in the underworld with only rocks to eat. The Mayan technology, they had very few technological advances, but they did have a writing system. They used symbols which were meant to denote different sound words and syllables. Stelas were the carving symbols into rocks. They were most known for their ball courts, which is a ball game. The game is where a ball was moved with hips, arms, and hands, and the losing team was sacrificed. The Aztec, they had a language, it's Nahuatl. It's still used in some Mexican cities today. They had a writing system that called for glyphs or pictographs. They did not have an alphabet, and only priests knew how to read and write. Their weapons were tools made from bone, stone, and obsidian. They believed that their illnesses could come from natural causes as well as supernatural causes. And their medicine was herbs, and herbs were used to cure sicknesses, and steam baths. They believed that you would be able to get all the sweat out of your body, would get rid of all of the toxins. And the Inca technology, they did not have basic technology. They didn't have a wheel, no writing system, no iron for tools, and they were up in the mountains, so to not have a wheel was pretty hard. What they did have was a road system. Their road system was built with stone, and they had rope bridges that was used for communication. Catskis were runners who would run around the pass and transfer messages. You would run to one man, transfer a message, and he would run to another, kind of like telephone. So obviously didn't really work because the game telephone doesn't ever work. And then quipas is a series of strings of knots. The number of knots and the size of the knots and the distance between the knots conveyed a meaning to the Inca, sort of like writing.